My nephew's hands hit my back hard. I tumbled down 14 wooden steps, my body cracking against each edge like kindling snapping. When I finally stopped at the bottom, blood filled my mouth. Julian stood at the top, swaying drunk, laughing. "Maybe now you'll learn your place, old man," he said. In the living room, the television kept playing. My brother Harold pulled the curtains shut. Nobody moved to help me. That night, lying in my bed with bruises blooming across my ribs, I made a decision. If they could watch me fall and pretend they saw nothing, they would damn sure watch me rise. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The pain woke me at 3 in the morning, sharp and insistent. Every breath felt like broken glass shifting inside my chest. I touched my face and my fingers came away sticky with dried blood. The stairs had left their signature across my body in purple and black. I was 68 years old, a retired history teacher, a widower who had raised this boy from age 7. Julian was my sister's son. When she died of cancer, he'd clung to my leg at her funeral, sobbing into my trousers. I taught him to ride a bicycle, to tie his shoes properly, to speak with respect. Now he pushed me downstairs when I refused him money. The house was silent except for Harold snoring down the hall. I pushed myself up slowly, testing each limb. Nothing broken, just battered. My reflection in the bathroom mirror showed a stranger with a split lip and blackened eye. This stranger looked harder than the man who'd fallen. Something had changed during that tumble. Something fundamental had broken that wasn't bone. By morning, the house had rewritten history. Harold sat at the kitchen table reading the newspaper like it was any other Thursday. Julian scrolled through his phone, coffee steaming beside him. The stairs had been wiped clean. Nobody mentioned the blood. Nobody asked if I needed a doctor. "Morning, Charlie," Harold said without looking up. "You should be more careful on those stairs. You're not as steady as you used to be." Not steady. That was their story. The old fool tripped. I poured myself coffee with hands that barely trembled and sat at the table. "You're absolutely right," I said quietly. "I need to be much more careful." Julian glanced at me, something flickering in his eyes. Suspicion maybe, or guilt. I smiled at him, slow and calm, the way I used to smile before handing out final exams. His expression shifted uncomfortably. "What?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "Just remembering something important. If they wanted to pretend I was invisible, I would become a ghost. And ghosts see everything." That afternoon, I drove to Fletcher's Electronics on Madison Street. The young man behind the counter had a nose ring and kind eyes. "Help you, sir?" he asked. "I need security cameras," I said. "Small ones. The kind people don't notice." He studied my bruised face for a long moment. "Home security? Something like that. How many?" "3 to start." He showed me cameras disguised as smoke detectors, charging blocks, even books. I chose 3, along with a tablet to monitor them remotely. The total came to $470. Money I'd saved from my pension. Money that used to go toward Julian's rent, his car payments, his endless emergencies. "These record to cloud storage," the young man explained. "Nobody can erase them even if they find the cameras." "Perfect," I said. When I got home, Harold and Julian were watching football. I carried my bag upstairs slowly, playing the exhausted old man. In my bedroom, I unpacked my new eyes. The first camera went inside a hollowed-out encyclopedia on my bookshelf, aimed at my bedroom door. The second I mounted in the hallway smoke detector, positioned to capture the staircase perfectly. The third I placed in the living room, disguised as a charging block behind the television. By dinner time, 3 silent witnesses were recording everything. I tested the feed on my tablet. Crystal clear footage, perfect audio. Julian's voice came through sharp as he bragged to Harold. "The old man's getting more pathetic every day. Soon we won't have to wait for nature to take its course." Harold laughed. "Just be patient. The house will be ours eventually." I watched this exchange from my bedroom, my bruised face reflected in the tablet screen. The man in that reflection looked nothing like the teacher who'd raised Julian. That man was gone, tumbled down the stairs, and left for dead. What came back up was something colder. Something that understood revenge required patience and proof. I called my solicitor the next morning. Marcus Clark had been my lawyer since my wife died. Good man, precise and thorough. "Marcus, I need to see you today. It's urgent." He heard something in my voice. 2 o'clock. "I'll be there." His office smelled of leather and old paper, comforting scents from a more civilized time. When he saw my face, his expression went cold. "Charles, what happened?" I handed him the tablet and pressed play. He watched in silence as Julian shoved me, as I tumbled and crashed, as my family closed their curtains. When it finished, he set the tablet down carefully. "This is assault. Possibly attempted murder given your age and the force used." "I don't want police," I said. "Not yet." "Then what do you want?" "I want my accounts protected. I want the house deed amended. I want emergency clauses that activate if anything happens to me." Marcus nodded slowly. "You're preparing for war. I'm preparing for justice." The paperwork took 3 days. Marcus worked fast, filing amendments and protections with the precision of a military campaign. By Friday, every asset I owned was locked behind legal walls that Julian and Harold couldn't breach. The house deed now carried my name alone, with explicit instructions that upon my death or incapacity, everything would transfer to a trust benefiting elder abuse prevention programs. Nothing for Julian. Nothing for Harold. The irony tasted sweet. They were trying to inherit a fortune that would vanish the moment they succeeded in harming me. Marcus called Friday evening to confirm everything was filed. "Charles, are you safe in that house?" he asked. "I will be," I said. "Just make sure those documents are secure. They're in my vault and filed with the courts. If anything happens to you, the authorities will know exactly where to look and what questions to ask." I hung up and looked at myself in the mirror. The bruises were fading to yellow and green now, but the hardness in my eyes remained. Good. I would need it. Julian announced he was throwing himself a birthday party that Sunday. At my house, naturally. At my expense. Just family, he said at breakfast Saturday morning. Maybe 30 people. 30 people. In my home. Celebrating the man who tried to kill me. Harold nodded enthusiastically. Great idea. Charlie, you can handle the catering, right? Every instinct screamed to refuse, to throw them out, to call police immediately. But revenge rushed, is revenge wasted. I had learned that teaching history for 40 years. "Of course," I said mildly. "I'll take care of everything." Julian looked surprised. "Really? You're not going to complain about money?" "It's your birthday," I said. "Family should celebrate together." Something uneasy crossed his face, but greed won out. "Thanks, Uncle Charlie. I knew you'd come through." I smiled and returned to my newspaper. The cameras were recording every word. The legal documents were filed. The trap was set. Now I just needed him to step into it completely. Sunday arrived bright and clear. I hired caterers and rented tables, spending nearly $2,000 of my own money. The house filled with Julian's friends, loud voices and laughter echoing off walls that had witnessed my assault. Harold played host, shaking hands and telling stories. Julian held court in my living room, accepting birthday wishes like a king receiving tribute. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, refilling drinks and clearing plates. Old Uncle Charlie, invisible and harmless. Nobody noticed when I adjusted the cameras for better angles. Nobody saw me recording their conversations on my phone as they gossiped about Charlie's declining health and how much longer he had. At 8 o'clock, Julian stood on a chair and raised his glass. "To family," he shouted, "and to the house that will keep us together for generations." Everyone cheered. I raised my glass with them and smiled. Because the house deed in my safety deposit box told a very different story. The party ended near midnight. I cleaned while Harold and Julian passed out drunk in their rooms. Alone in my kitchen surrounded by empty bottles and abandoned plates, I opened my tablet and reviewed the footage. Hours of evidence. Julian boasting about inheriting everything. Harold discussing my accidents with knowing smiles. Friends making jokes about helping me toward my final rest. Every word recorded in perfect clarity. Every laugh captured forever. I uploaded everything to 3 separate cloud accounts, then emailed copies to Marcus with instructions to open them if anything happened to me. The kitchen clock read 2 in the morning when I finally finished. My body ached from the fall, from the cleaning, from carrying the weight of this betrayal. But my mind felt sharp and clear. The old Charles would have confronted them, would have appealed to their conscience and morality. The new Charles understood that some people only learn through consequences, and their education was about to begin. Monday morning, I created a private YouTube account under a pseudonym. At exactly 6 o'clock, while Harold and Julian still slept, I uploaded the staircase footage. Title: Would your nephew do this? Description: 68-year-old man pushed downstairs by family member who wants his inheritance. Watch what happens when they think nobody's looking. I set it to public and shared the link on 3 local community Facebook groups, tagging it with our neighborhood name. Then I made breakfast and waited. By 7:30, my phone started buzzing. Messages from neighbors. Calls from people I hadn't spoken to in years. The video was spreading. At 8:15, Julian's bedroom door slammed open. He stormed into the kitchen, phone clutched in his shaking hand. "What did you do?" he shouted. I looked up from my newspaper calmly. "I taught you to tell the truth. I'm just practicing what I preached." "Take it down." "Why?" "It's just documentation. Nothing false about it." Harold appeared behind Julian, face red with fury. "Charles, this is insane. You're destroying this family." I set down my newspaper carefully. "I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped hiding what you built." "People are calling me," Harold said. "My business partners, my friends. They're asking questions." "Then answer them honestly," I said. "Tell them you watched your brother get assaulted and did nothing." Julian's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might hit me again. I almost hoped he would. The cameras were still recording. But he saw something in my expression that stopped him. Maybe he finally recognized that the weak old man was gone. "You can't do this," he said weakly. "I already did." I pulled out a manila folder and slid it across the table. Medical reports documenting my injuries. Police statements from neighbors who heard the assault. Video evidence from multiple angles. And legal documents transferring all my assets to charitable trusts if anything happens to me. Harold opened the folder with trembling hands. His face went pale as he read. "You spied on us," Julian whispered. "I documented abuse. I corrected. There's a difference." "Nobody will believe this," Harold tried. "They'll think you manipulated the footage. Marcus has the originals, time-stamped and verified. But please, call a lawyer and challenge them. I'd love to explain everything in court." The reality was settling over them like fog. Their inheritance was gone. Their reputations were crumbling. The helpless old man they dismissed had outmaneuvered them completely. "What do you want?" Harold finally asked. "An apology? Money? What?" I stood slowly, my bruised ribs protesting. "I want you out of my house. Both of you. Today." "This is my home too," Julian protested. "Check the deed. It's my name only. Always has been. You've been guests who overstayed their welcome." "Where will we go?" Harold asked. "I honestly don't care." I walked past them toward my bedroom, then paused. "You taught me an important lesson when you closed those curtains. You taught me that family means nothing without respect. Thank you for that education." They were gone by evening, taking only what they could carry. The house felt enormous and quiet without their presence. I walked through empty rooms, touching furniture my wife and I had chosen together decades ago. Everything felt different now, cleaner somehow, despite the dust. That night, I sat in my living room and watched the video view count climb. 15,000 views. 20,000. Comments poured in from strangers offering support, sharing their own stories of family betrayal, thanking me for speaking up. The local news called requesting an interview. I declined. This wasn't about fame. It was about justice. Around midnight, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera feed before answering. Police officers, 2 of them, looking official and concerned. "Mr. Rowe? We had a report you might be in danger." I invited them in and showed them everything. The footage, the medical reports, the legal documents. They took notes and statements, their expressions growing grimmer with each detail. "Why didn't you report this immediately?" the older officer asked. "Because I needed proof no one could deny," I said. "I needed to make sure they couldn't talk their way out of it or make me look confused." The officer nodded slowly. "You built a case." "I taught high school for 40 years. I know how to handle bullies." They left with copies of everything, promising to follow up. I watched their car disappear down the street and felt something unclench in my chest. The official machinery was moving now. This wasn't just family drama anymore. It was criminal investigation. Over the next few days, more people came forward. Neighbors who'd heard arguing, friends who'd witnessed Julian's temper, even old students of mine who remembered my lessons about standing up to injustice. Each testimony added another brick to the wall I was building around my former family. Marcus called Thursday morning with news. Julian's been charged with assault and elder abuse. Harold's facing charges as an accessory for failing to report. The prosecutor is taking this very seriously given the video evidence. "Good," I said. That's the beginning, not the end. The trial took 6 months to arrive. 6 months of depositions and lawyer meetings and media attention I never wanted. The video had gone viral by then. Millions of views, news segments about elder abuse prevention, advocacy groups using my story as an example. I became accidentally famous as the grandfather who fought back. I hated every minute of the attention, but I endured it because the alternative was worse. The alternative was letting them win. The courtroom was packed the day testimony began. Julian sat at the defense table in a suit I'd probably bought him years ago, looking smaller than I remembered. Harold sat in the gallery, avoiding eye contact. The prosecutor played the video on a large screen. Even after seeing it hundreds of times, watching my body tumble and crack against those stairs made my stomach clench. The jury watched in silence. Several looked horrified. When the video ended, the prosecutor called me to the stand. I walked up slowly, my cane tapping against the floor. The injuries had mostly healed, but the limp remained. Mr. Rowe, the prosecutor began gently. Can you tell the jury what led to the events captured in that video? I told them everything. Raising Julian after his mother died. Supporting him financially for decades. The pattern of escalating disrespect and demands. The night he pushed me because I refused to give him $5,000 for gambling debts. When you were lying at the bottom of those stairs, what went through your mind? The prosecutor asked. I looked at Julian directly. I thought about how I'd raised him to be better than this. And I thought about how I'd failed him by never teaching him that actions have consequences. His lawyer objected. The judge sustained it. But the words had landed. During cross-examination, Julian's attorney tried to paint me as vindictive and manipulative. Isn't it true you installed hidden cameras specifically to entrap my client? I installed cameras to protect myself from further assault. I corrected. Your client entrapped himself by assaulting me on video. You never called the police immediately. Instead, you orchestrated this entire public spectacle. I documented a pattern of abuse and neglect before making it public, I said calmly. That's not orchestration. That's prudence. The attorney continued attacking my credibility for 20 minutes. I answered each question with the same measured calm I'd used teaching teenagers for 4 decades. Never defensive, never emotional, just facts. When I finally stepped down, I felt exhausted but satisfied. The truth was on record now. Whatever the jury decided, I'd said my piece. The defense tried claiming Julian was drunk and didn't mean to push hard, that it was an accident born from an argument between family members, nothing more. They played character witnesses who testified about Julian's good qualities, his charity work, his plans to help me in my old age. I listened to it all with a slight smile, because none of it explained why Harold closed the curtains. None of it justified leaving me bleeding at the bottom of the stairs. None of it erased the videos of them laughing about my upcoming death. The prosecutor's closing argument was powerful and brief. The defense wants you to believe this was a tragic accident between family members. But the evidence shows premeditation and callousness. They want you to believe Mr. Rowe is vindictive for defending himself. But I ask you, what would you do if your family assaulted you and then pretended it never happened? This isn't about revenge. This is about accountability. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, Julian's face was white. On the charge of assault causing bodily harm, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of elder abuse. Guilty. Julian's head dropped to the table. His lawyer patted his shoulder, already planning appeals. But I knew those appeals would fail. The evidence was overwhelming. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. Harold was convicted separately as an accessory, receiving probation and mandatory counseling. The house arrest seemed fitting for a man who'd closed his curtains on family. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed me with questions. I made one brief statement. I hope this case reminds people that elder abuse happens in families that look normal. Document everything. Protect yourselves. And never accept that abuse is inevitable just because you're old. Julian received 4 years in prison. Harold lost his contractor's license and most of his friends. The house sold for $700,000, enough to fund the scholarship program I'd established for students who'd overcome family hardship. I moved to a small apartment near the college where I'd earned my teaching degree 50 years ago. The space was perfect for one person. No stairs to worry about. No rooms full of ghosts. On my first night there, I sat on my small balcony and watched the sunset paint the sky orange and gold. A student walked past below, textbooks clutched under their arm, hurrying toward some deadline. I remembered being that young once, believing hard work and honesty guaranteed a good life. H had taught me different lessons. Sometimes good people got pushed downstairs. Sometimes family betrayed you. Sometimes the world was cruel without reason. But H had also taught me resilience and strategy. It taught me that being underestimated was a weapon if you knew how to use it. It taught me that mercy without accountability was just permission for further harm. The first letter from Julian arrived 3 months into his sentence. I recognized his handwriting immediately. For several days, I left it sitting unopened on my kitchen table, next to where I took my morning coffee. Finally, curiosity won over anger. The letter was 2 pages long, handwritten on prison stationery. His penmanship was shakier than I remembered. Uncle Charlie, it began. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I needed to write anyway, to tell you I finally understand what you tried to teach me. Prison gives you a lot of time to think. I've spent 3 months replaying that night, trying to understand who I'd become. The truth is, I became someone who thought your love and money were things I deserved just for existing. I stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as an obstacle to what I wanted. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I know I destroyed our relationship beyond repair. I just wanted you to know that your final lesson worked. I understand consequences now. I read it twice, then put it in a drawer with my important documents. Not forgiveness, exactly, but acknowledgement. Life settled into new routines. I volunteered at the local library teaching reading to adults who'd never learned. I attended community theater performances. I made friends with my neighbors, genuine relationships built on respect rather than obligation. The scholarship fund grew. First 1 student, then 3, then a dozen receiving help to attend college despite coming from difficult family situations. I met with each recipient personally, sharing my story and listening to theirs. You survived, a young woman named Patricia told me once. She'd escaped an abusive home at 17. You could have given up, but you fought back. That's why I'm here. You would have found a way regardless, I said. I just helped clear the path. No, she insisted. You showed me that being old doesn't mean being helpless. That fighting back is possible at any age. That matters more than money. I thought about that conversation for days afterward. Maybe the viral video, the trial, the public attention had been worth it after all. Not for revenge, but for the message. A year after the trial, Marcus called with unexpected news. Julian's lawyer has filed a motion for early release based on good behavior and completion of rehabilitative programs. My first instinct was anger. For years had become barely one. But I surprised myself with my response. What does the prosecutor think? She's not opposing it, given his cooperation and genuine remorse. But she wanted your input first. I sat with the question for several days. The old Charles, the one who'd raised Julian, would have argued for mercy immediately. The new Charles, forged in that staircase fall, wanted justice maintained. But maybe there was a middle ground. Tell them I won't oppose early release on one condition. He completes 500 hours of community service at elder care facilities. I want him to see what it's like from the other side. Marcus chuckled. That's perfectly vindictive and educational. I love it. The judge agreed to the terms. Julian was released after 18 months, with 3 years of probation and his community service requirement. I didn't attend his release. That chapter was closed. 2 years after the fall, I woke to find snow covering my small balcony in perfect white silence. The morning was peaceful in a way that felt earned rather than given. I made coffee and checked my email. The scholarship fund had received a large anonymous donation, enough to support 10 more students. The donor note simply said, "Thank you for teaching us to stand up." I smiled and sipped my coffee, watching the snow fall. My body had healed mostly, though my knees still ached before rain and stairs required careful attention. But those small pains reminded me of something important. I'd survived. More than that, I'd won. Not by destroying Julian and Harold, though they'd certainly faced consequences. I'd won by refusing to accept that being old meant being helpless, that family betrayal should be endured in silence, that dignity was something you lost with age. The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. I checked the camera, habit now, before answering. A young man stood outside, maybe 30, wearing a volunteer badge from the elder care facility where Julian was completing his service. "Mr. Rowe? I'm Thomas Chun, Activities Director at Riverside Care." Julian asked me to deliver something. He handed me an envelope, then left quickly, probably uncomfortable with whatever drama he'd been pulled into. Inside was a handwritten card and a photograph. The photo showed Julian reading to a group of elderly residents, his expression patient and attentive. The card read, "Uncle Charlie, they told me to find meaning in consequences. I think I'm starting to understand. These people remind me of you. Not the man I pushed, but the man who raised me. I see now what I destroyed. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know the lesson took. You were right about everything. Love, Julian." I set the card beside the first letter in my drawer. Two small pieces of paper that might represent genuine change, or might just be manipulation from someone who'd learned to say what people wanted to hear. Time would tell. But I realized something important as I returned to my coffee and my snow-covered view. Whether Julian changed or not didn't matter to my peace anymore. Spring arrived, melting the snow into streams that fed the college gardens below my apartment. I planted tomatoes on my balcony, small determinate varieties perfect for containers. Each morning, I checked their progress, marveling at how something so fragile could grow so strong with proper care and attention. The scholarship fund held its first annual dinner, bringing together donors and recipients. I sat at a table with Patricia and 4 other students, listening to them discuss their dreams with the kind of hope I'd almost forgotten existed. "Mr. Rowe," Patricia said during dessert, "what would you tell your younger self, knowing everything you know now?" I considered the question carefully. I'd tell him that love without boundaries becomes permission for harm, that generosity without respect creates entitlement, and that the hardest lessons often come from the people we trust most. "Would you still raise Julian the same way?" someone asked. "No," I admitted. "I'd teach him earlier that my love wasn't a blank check. That family means mutual respect, not unconditional acceptance of bad behavior. But I can't change the past. I can only help people learn from my mistakes." The dinner ended late, with hugs and promises to stay in touch.